Good morning and thanks for joining us. You're listening to the Francine Marie Show, where we address issues and concerns to you and your family. Each week, this show explores a wide variety of topics. And now here's your host, Francine Marie.
Do you think voter fraud sometimes happens in the United States? Well, we hear about other countries, how they can sway a vote. Well, we all know that it's illegal to increase the vote share of a favorite candidate and depressing the vote of the rival candidate. So how can you sway a vote? Well, illegal voter registration is one, intimidation at the polls is another, and improper vote counting. Well, we all heard the controversy about Senator Al Franken with the voter fraud happening in that area. Well, does it really happen in North Carolina? Our job now is to do our homework to figure out what candidate is going to be the best representative for us, the people. Well, why don't you take it to the test? Call some of these folks that are running for office. See if they return your call. Email them. Do they reply? Do they ignore? Read up on them. What's their history? Well, we're going to delve into the history of our next guest. This morning, we're talking to Gardenia Henley. She ran for governor of North Carolina, but came in third. But she still has a smile on her face, and she's joining us this morning to tell us about her campaign and if she thinks voter fraud happens right in our area. Gardenia has nicknamed herself the People's Representative. Good morning.
Good morning, Francine. Thank you for having me, and I am the People's Representative. Recently ran for office for, as you said, for the office of governor. During the primary, I did come in third place. It was a nice experience. Again, thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
You know why I like you? We can't say who we like and who we don't like, but I'll tell you, I like you because you pick up your phone.
Thank you very much.
And that's what we want out of our representatives. Well, I know you guys are busy, but be accessible.
Well, see, that's how it should be. You know, if you're going to represent the people, then you should be at a point where when your phone rings, if you're available, then you answer it. I like to do it.
As a politician, when you look at a problem that's in the community, how do you go about solving it? What's your strategy?
I look at the basics as far as what my constituents want me to do. I look at the dollars, and I'm always thinking, how cost effective is this going to be? How well is it going to serve the people? And that's what I think all candidates should be looking at, especially when we come to what we call the hot topics: education, economic development.
Now, Charlotte is doing a pretty good job right now.
Charlotte is really number one in most people's mind as far as economic development. You've sort of cornered the banking industry, you know. That's a good thing, too.
Now the energy hub. Right, that. Right. All we have to do is train everybody to do these jobs.
You know, I'm from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and Winston-Salem used to be a tobacco industry, so to speak, tobacco and furniture, and now it's moved forward to economics, you know, to biotechnology, which is a good thing. But as we move to that level, we've got to look at, do we have the people in the right career paths to where they can compete for jobs that's coming up like that, to be more like Charlotte.
So how long have you been in politics?
Since 2009. Now, I want to say this. A lot of times when I'm asked that, I say, well, I've been in politics for over 2 decades because I used to audit legislation at the executive level. It's very political in the arena like that. Inspector generals are a part of the government, but the unique thing, which is what I was pushing for North Carolina, the unique thing about inspector generals is that you are autonomous. You have that autonomy. You're a part of the agency, but you're the agency's watchdog. You know, and I've been called a watchdog, and I accept that term proudly. Okay. I do. Because, we need oversight. Government always need oversight. Not too much, but I think that, and one of my platform items as well is talking about oversight of various entities, of various committees or whatever. You must have that. You know, you need someone, when you're talking about taxpayers' dollars, you need someone that's going to make sure that things are happening ethically and legally and correct.
So that's your 22 years as Inspector General, Auditor, and in charge.
That's my 22 years. And another thing you were talking earlier about, how do I do that? You know, when I retired in 2005 from the Department of State, the U.S. Department of State in Washington, D.C., And when you retire, you don't really take off your hat per se. You still have that ear. You still have that view. And for me, I still have that heart to want to make sure that tax dollars are being spent correctly. And that's what my platform is all about, and that's what I'm always pushing. And, in education, we've really got to do something about education. And I want to throw that out really quickly because that's, I can't say what's number one, but education is paramount.
We've got to compete for our own colleges in our own state.
We do.
We really want to compete globally. But if we can just compete within our own state to get into these colleges, and we've got great universities.
We have excellent universities, and what a lot of people may not know, but I'll just throw it out there, is North Carolina has more universities than any other state in the union. So we need to come closer to number one, if not become number one. Of course, the goal is number one. But we're ranked at, I think it's 49 or something like that in the U.S. And we really need to fund education properly, so we can get the quality of instruction, that we need to actually move forward.
Well, we have a new superintendent now, so yay for us. It seems like that's kind of a revolving door. Every couple of years we get a new one because do they really want to fix the problems that are out there? Do politicians really want to fix problems out there? Because we'll put you out of a job. But why can't we fix these problems that are been around since I was a kid and might be around when my grandkids have kids? We know what the problems are, but we can't ever fix them.
You know what I found, Francine, is that a lot of times, especially, let's talk about politicians. A lot of politicians, most of them, I would hope, that they want to fix the problem, but the problem in itself is they don't know how. And that's what I brought to the table was my knowledge and experience. Being able to look at an area, a program, or whatever, and identify what the problems are, and quickly. For some things, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to do it, but you must speak the language. And if the politicians who are put into a certain office, for example, for governor, let's talk about that. If they don't speak the language, if they don't know how to, for example, balance that budget, the governor's sole responsibility is to manage the budget and to implement the law. So if you don't know anything about budgets and how to manage budgets, you're never going to get it right unless you can get the right people around you. But you have to know certain things, certain language, so to speak, to even get the right people around you. And the political arena is so difficult to do that because you want to hire their cronies or whatever. And that's the issue.
We're talking to her this morning, the people's representative. It's Gardenia Henley. She ran in the primary for governor, didn't win, but she did come in third. So what can our candidates now, Walter Dalton and Pat McCrory, do to win this race?
First of all, I'd like to say I'm a Democrat, so I'd like to give some hip pointers for Walter Dalton. And as far as Pat McCrory, good luck, but even better luck to Walter Dalton. But what I'd like to see happen is to keep the candidates on both sides should keep good ethics. Listen to what the people are saying. Get out. Mingle with the people. Go out into the various neighborhoods. Do it the old-fashioned grassroots way. Knock on doors or what have you. And I have to admit, when I was out there on the campaign trail, everyone was telling me, well, Miss Henley, the reason why we're voting for you is because you personally asked us for your vote. And you just don't see candidates out there wanting to really meet with the people and really grasp what the issues are. And, a couple of candidates out there, they really said things that was just so inaccurate as far as what the people wanted and what the people needed. As far as education as well, a subject is so important. They just really were not in tune with that, and they ask questions, and they give this blanket comment like, well, the education system is okay. The education system is not okay. And if you get out and you knock on doors, if you talk to the teachers, if you talk to the other people who are involved with education, parents, you know that, it's really not. So, directly answering your question, we need to, the candidates need to consider the people who put them in office or who will be putting them in office, consider what they need. And the major thing is that they need to look at North Carolina as though it is a business, North Carolina is in the business of getting our tax dollars and hopefully putting them where they should be. And they also need to look at the taxpayers and the people who vote as their employees. As a candidate for governor, I viewed every person who would vote for me, who wouldn't vote for me, as my employers. And I was the employee. So I viewed everyone who was voting, who votes, regardless to what side they're on, as my employers and me being the employee. And that's what the candidates need to really focus in on. Don't just come out, a few weeks or a month before election time and, impress a few palms, but really stay in touch. Have the forums where you're meeting with people in all of the various cities. These were my plans for, for governor. And this is what I like to see, whoever wins do, is to stay in tune with the taxpayers. Because it's the taxpayers who put you in office, and it's the taxpayers who take you out of office.
So if we're sitting at our coffee table, kitchen table, sofa, riding in the car right now, and we've got burning desire to run for an office, where should we begin? Of course, we should begin in our own neighborhoods.
Start right at home in your own neighborhood, and you talk to people. You got to get out there and find out what people want you to do. We can see blanket, areas on TV or in the media where, they're saying, well, this is what the people are saying. But it's not until you actually get out there and knock on doors, until you put a face to what's happening in the communities. You got to put a face.
Well, let's highlight the faces of women. Women's rights. Big issue right now. We know the issue, so how can men decide for us?
I long for the day that there's parity. Parity, meaning equal pay for equal work. That's what parity is all about. And President Obama has got some real good initiatives forward, relative to parity. But, there's still, the glass ceiling still exists, but, it's easier to touch, now. But, yeah, women's rights has always, been paramount to me. And female veterans' rights, that's a subject. I'm for veterans' rights across the board, but especially in North Carolina and in the U.S. as well, need to do more for female veterans' rights, to support female veterans. That's an area that we've come up short.
We've always said we need to support vets, but female vets.
Right. And you know that I'm a veteran of the U.S. Air Force. I've gone to several veterans administrations, and, when you walk in, it's basically male dominated, and that's just the nature of it. But and when the females come in, then sometimes they've really got to scruffle around to accommodate the females. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about that. And I think that we really need to push for to be more amenable to the female veterans.
Amendment 1, wasn't that a confusing one?
Oh, yeah, Amendment 1.
Oh, my gosh, whoever wrote that jargon on the ballot.
Yeah. Some say that it was meant to be ambiguous, and it was not meant to be clear, but, all the more reason why voters have to really do their homework. And I did a lot of explaining the details of Amendment 1 or what have you, because a lot of people thought, that when that they were voting for marriage, same sex, and they actually weren't, because of how the wording of it. So I think it could have been just really, it could have been worded much better. I agree with that.
How do you feel on Amendment 1?
I've always said that a governor's responsibility is not to discriminate or take sides on either side, whether you're for or against. I think that, of course, I have my opinion about it. But one thing that I hold fast to about Amendment 1 is the fact that it's a discriminatory practice. Amendment 1 is discrimination at its best, and it should have not been written into the Constitution. And I hope that there will be something that can be done, and I'm sure that there is. Amendment 1 can be revisited to where, you're not discriminating against a certain group. And, and I feel that anyone who can come out and say, well, I support Amendment 1 wholeheartedly, especially a politician, means that you can discriminate with other things too. And that's why I always took the stand that, of course, I have an opinion about it. But as a governor, as a leader of the people, I have to let the vote, which is actually taking place, rule. And now that Amendment 1 is in play, then now it's the governor's responsibility to enforce that. And that's basically, where I stand with Amendment 1. And I do know that it's discrimination, and it just should not have been written into the Constitution like that.
Well, if we had to bring up some hot topics and some things that you're very passionate and adamant about, what would you talk about?
North Carolina lacks good ethics in government, and I call a spade about that.
Okay, what's the bottom line to that?
Well, we have a lot of voter ballot fraud, and I have a report out that's called the Henley Report, and I have another report that I'm going to issue. Is going to talk more. It's going to be the Henley Report Revisited, and it's going to talk about voter ballot fraud and the illegal things that happens during elections that no one seems to do anything about. And I can also say this is that, it happens on the Democratic side and it happens on the Republican side. Go to my website. You can actually read it there. But it talked about voter ballot fraud and unethical and illegal acts in Forsyth County, all the way actually to the state of North Carolina, officials within the state of North Carolina. And I identified them by names. There's quite a few. The statements there, and you can see all of the names of people who either knew or was aware of or participated in the voter ballot fraud. But basically, it was because employees who currently, and some of them were fired, worked at the Forsyth County Board of Elections in Winston-Salem, came to me and said, "Hey, Miss Henley, we've got a problem." And they basically were the ones who, got me on the trail of the voter ballot fraud. They told me that basically they had thrown away thousands of votes. And people say, well, how can you throw away votes? Well, if you read the Henley Report, you'll see it, but they just totally ignored them. So from 2010, and actually it goes all the way back, it goes further than 2010. It goes back to, I've identified issues back to 2008 during the latest presidential election from this one. So from 2008 until present. But they basically told me that what they were doing was just, and I asked them, well, why did you do this? They said that they were afraid of losing their job. So they said that they threw away votes, and there were voter registrations where, you have the questions on there, are you a U.S. citizen? Are you a felon? And they said that they were told by the Forsyth County Board of Elections director, at the time is Rob Kaufman and still is, and they were told by him that they should ignore that, and so it didn't matter whether they were a felon or a U.S. citizen. They checked the box, yes. And for felon, they checked no, or they just ignored it. So, and these are all things that you can find in the Henley Report that has just really been ignored. We do need campaign finance reform. I'm all for that. And then let's talk about the voter ID. I am for that. Now, I'm for it in a certain regard, meaning that, I believe that if we ask voters to have IDs when they come to vote, it's going to alleviate a lot of voter ballot fraud. And I was looking at something on the internet last night, and someone was saying that, oh, there's no voter ballot fraud. Then it's like I said, if you get out there and you knock on doors, if you're in tune with what's happening all over North Carolina, you know that it is, but it's accepted.
Okay, so break that down one more notch. If there's voter fraud, where does it happen and how does it happen?
Let me say this, it's happening all over North Carolina, not just in Winston-Salem, but it's definitely happening in Forsyth County. And the problem is the Board of Elections from I'll speak for Forsyth County because that's where I'm from Forsyth County to the state, Raleigh, North Carolina, it's being ignored. And for whatever reason, and I think that a lot of it is because it is political. I probably know more than I ever thought I would know about voter ballot fraud is because I've studied the system and I know the systems within North Carolina. And a lot of what's happening is happening right under our noses. For example, there's a lot of people who vote multiple times. Now, I brought that out in the Henley Report. And then it was said, well, if you can just find one person who who voted multiple times, and we will prosecute.
Well, they're not going to raise their hand, are they?
Well, I found one person, and all of this is on my website. You can hear the recording where this person actually comes forward and say that, I voted multiple times, and she was also escorted up by officials who are currently in office. A current commissioner in Forsyth County escorted this person up. They know this. I put it in my report. I called the spade by name. I called it by name. I didn't write an ambiguous report, and just nothing is being done about it. So, and these are things that, people need to know. And it is possible to vote multiple times, especially if the system is not integrated, meaning if you've got 4 computers and each computer's memory is not connected to the other, and I really hate to say this because I don't want to help promote it, but if you've got these 3 computers and none of the computers' memories are integrated, then a person can come up and vote 3 times. If they're not recognized, then you've got a problem. You've got someone who's voted multiple times. And it says that the system will catch it, but that's not true. Not in most cases. The system cannot catch it like that. It's caught by someone recognizes the person. So that's one way. And also you've got, and this is the clever way, what's been happening in Forsyth County is you've got those absentee ballots, where people can mail those in. And they mail in multiples. All you need is a list of people who've fallen out of the system, or individuals who've passed on, maybe early 1800s or whatever, and it's going to be hard to trace that, and they just do the absentee ballots and mail them in like that. There's a lot of different examples that I've put forward and I've discussed that everyone's just ignoring.
You're like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. What's going on back there?
I wish I could correct the problem like the wizard did.
It's Gardenia Henley joining us this morning. She ran in the primary, running for governor. She didn't win, but she came in 3rd. Still got a smile on her face, and we can get the Henley report, which she's been talking about the voter fraud, at thepeoplesrepresentative.org. You've been a delight. You've got to come back and share more.
I love to.
All right. Well, what can you leave us with this morning that we need to have our eyes open about?
The voters really need to really review the background of the various candidates. Look at what their records are about. Look at what they stand for, and don't just go on what someone told you. Actually, Google their names. Look at what they're claiming they can do. Look at whether or not they can actually do what they're saying. Look at their
history. Right, exactly. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us for the Francine Marie Show, where we address issues concerning you and your family. That's all for now. See you next week.